Howdy. I'll be walking you through how I make fragrances. I've never made a day-night fragrance before. That's what I'm going to be trying today. I have a formula here. I have all the materials on the table. This is pretty much the way that I started out making fragrances. I make very small, like 1 to 2 milliliter samples, essentially, or trials. I kind of refine it from there. I put in what I think will smell good. I take some things out. I change the amounts. Normally, if you're making a full batch of fragrances, you would want to weigh everything out so everything is just perfect. And that's what I would do before actually finalizing the formula to make sure that it smells the way that you like it. You'd have to get an expensive scale. Make sure it can go up to a certain amount of weight, maybe 500 grams. That's what I have, and that's kind of on the cheaper end. That'll get you about 8 50 milliliter bottles. What I'm doing is just measuring everything in drops. It's the easiest way. It's the simplest way. It's not the best way, but for trials, I like it the most. And you might see some of these pipettes attached to the fragrance bottles. This is just to save pipettes. Perfumery is a very wasteful hobby, and I like to be as efficient or eco-friendly as I can. A lot of people do not like to reuse pipettes. It's, probably okay. I switch them out every once in a while. For me, everything still smells the same. I don't think I'm contaminating anything. If you want to save pipettes, you want to save on plastic, you can, put a little bit of tape on the bottle and then just pop the pipette in there when you're done and then just switch it out every few weeks or something. Or you can use dropper bottles. Some of these are dropper bottles. I would not recommend using dropper bottles to make a full batch of fragrance because it's very inconsistent. But for just counting drops, it's probably the best way to save on pipettes. So we'll get into it. So I have these 5 milliliter vials. And I'm probably going to fill up to maybe about there with materials and then probably about there with alcohol. I don't really measure out the alcohol. I kind of just do the eye test. And that works pretty well for me. And you have to take into account how much alcohol is in the dilutions. So I have like 1% dilutions, 10% dilutions, and 100%, so like no dilutions. There's going to be a good bit of alcohol in this trial before I start adding more alcohol into it. Yeah. So we'll have to keep that in mind when we're adding in the alcohol. Okay, the formula. I have never used a few of these. I've never used a few of these materials, so whenever I get new materials in, I like to put them in a fragrance just to try them out. A lot of people will put them on a paper strip, and they'll smell it every couple hours or maybe after a couple days, depending on how long-lasting it is. And they'll kind of gauge like how much they need to dilute it or how much they want to use. They'll put it with other paper strips and kind of like wave them over their nose to make like an accord without actually mixing anything. I don't really do that. I think it's fine if you want to do that. I just kind of like putting it in a fragrance and seeing how it reacts with other materials. I like that the most because I can kind of see how it reacts with other materials and maybe kind of think of other materials that it would go well with in that way and kind of just go by experimentation. One of the materials that I really want to use is Honey Miel. It's a very strong honey note. It's a mid-note. And I diluted it first to 10%. This is actually my second time trying to make this. The first time, diluting it to 10% was way too strong. It was just pretty much honey. So I diluted it to 1%. I still think that is probably too high, but we'll give it a shot. You never know until you try. And I want to add in rose as well. I think that'll be nice. I don't use rose often, but I think a honey rose day-night fragrance sounds interesting, so I'm going to try it. Alright, so no scale, just pipettes in the bottle. That's all I need. I'm going to be careful not to knock this over so everything doesn't fall out. Sometimes you can get something like a shot glass or something, put that in there, and then it's not gonna fall over. But I like to live dangerously, so I'm just going to do this. So our top is going to be cardamom and apple. So I have Cardamom CO2. It's my favorite form of cardamom. It's natural. I have a few synthetic cardamoms. I don't like them that much. I don't think I diluted them enough because they're very strong. It kind of smells like a house on fire. So I probably have to dilute those a lot more. But the natural stuff smells fine. We're going to put 3 drops of Cardamom CO2 at 0.1%. I'm using a drop bottle here, so it's going to come out quickly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that did not come out quickly. So when you put in a lot of alcohol into a dilution, like 1% or 0.1%, it's going to be very viscous and it's going to come like pouring out of the dropper bottle. So a trick you can use is to add like 5 or 10% DPG, and that'll thicken up the full dilution, and it won't come out of the dropper bottle too fast. So that's something I like to do. I might have done that with that because it didn't come out that quickly. 1 apple at 10%. This is just an apple accord. I don't know which one, but I did not make it. It's a base. One of those. Pretty strong. A lot of these like bases, they're like top and mid heavy, but they are strong somehow. Let's put these back. Okay, so that's our top. Pretty simple. My fragrances usually are base heavy. Base is probably like, I'd say 45 to 50% of my fragrances, and then the mid is like 45 to 40%, and then the base is like, or the top is like 5 to 10%, something like that. I don't know if that math adds up. But yeah, not a whole lot on the top. For trials, I like to keep it simple. I'm not even putting Isoe Super, Hedione, and Broxin. I'm not even putting those in there. I'm not going to waste those materials on a trial. Probably not going to break the bank by putting in those materials, but I know, I'm on the second version of this fragrance, so it's probably not going to be right, so might as well not add in the extra stuff. When you get closer to the end, put in your Broxin, your Hedione, and Isoe Super if you want to put those in, and your, like, I guess, nuance. Put that in there and see how it does. Let's put in the rose. So this is Rose Givco Revised. I diluted it to 1%. It's very strong. It's a mid-note. 1 drop. Very strong stuff. I don't really want the fragrance to smell like rose too much. I just kind of want it to be like in the background, making it fresher, making it brighter. Now for the honey. Man, that is very strong. And the orifice reducers in there. Oh god. I think this is going to be too much, but you never know until you try. 1 drop of Honey Miel at 1%. That's going to be like 1/20th of the final fragrance concentration. But it's probably going to have like a lot of the odor impact. Cognac. 10%. This is, I think, a natural cognac. It just smells green. It doesn't smell too boozy, but give it a try. See if it's good or not. That's what perfumery is about. It's about experimentation. So 2 drops of that at 10%. Linalyl Acetate. Kind of smells like bergamot. So put 1 drop in there. Just for, some nuance to give it like a citrusy edge to it. It's not going to smell citrusy, but I think it'll kind of, be there in the background, kind of supporting the fragrance. And a weird one. This one is called Fenchone, or El Fenchone. It's like mossy and minty. I've diluted to 1%. Sometimes, those like sweet or gourmand or like your spicy day night fragrances will have like a little menthol effect to it. And I feel like sweet and green kind of go into a lot of date night fragrances. I don't know if that like sounds correct to anyone, but I kind of smell like a green tinge a lot to like those date night fragrances. And I think that kind of like helps with like the sweetness. I think it's like a good balance between the sweetness and the spices. It's just like a touch of green. So that's where my idea is with Fenchone. And also I've never really used it and I just want to try it out. So 1 drop at 1% shouldn't really impact it too much. But if we like it, we can add more, we can reduce, we can remove it. The world is our oyster. And I always like to put in like some sort of bright floral note. So like Linalool is one of those notes that I have. Linalool is pretty strong. And it is an allergen, so you don't want to put too much of it in your final fragrance, but it is almost citrusy, almost floral, but it's just bright. Use a little bit in a fragrance and it makes the base a little less muddy. A lot of base notes are heavy and dark, and they just make the fragrance smell like mud. So, a little lemony, a little citrusy, a little floral. But this isn't really going to impact the smell, it's just going to make it brighter. And this is probably going to come out fast. Oh god. I did not put DPG in this, I should. So that was about 1 or 2 drops. Hopefully, that's okay. Because if you put in like 3 or 4 or more, it's going to be very annoying. It's going to be a very annoying fragrance until the mid is gone. So we don't want that. Just a touch of Linalool. So that is the mid. let's move on to the base. So I got this Palisandrol. It's a sandalwood, a woody specialty by Firmenich. So I'm assuming that means the base. If it has a cast number, it's not a base. This is 10% in DPG. I don't know if it's a single molecule or not. But it smells, woody, sandalwoody. It's a different kind of sandalwood than Habanol. So I wanted to try that out. I've used Habanol, I'm familiar with it. So we're just going to put in, I think, 1 drop of this. Yep. Okoumal. 10%, 3 drops. Or parts. Very deep, almost like sandalwoody or like ebony kind of smelling. I don't know if it's supposed to smell like oak or not, but it's like a deep, ambery, woody, almost sweet material. It lasts a long time, and I think I smell this in fragrances like the one Eau de Parfum. So I'm gonna throw that in here and see if it adds to the date nightiness. 1, 2, 3. Habanolide. I like to put a musk in all my fragrances. They last a long time. They smell nice. Sometimes they can smell a little woody. Sometimes they can smell clean. Habanolide is like a nice middle ground there. It's like not clean. It's a little woody actually, a little ambery, but it's nice. It's easy to use. You just need like 1 drop in a trial and you're good to go. Coumarin, 10%. This is pre-diluted because Coumarin, I believe, is solid. Strong stuff. Just 1 drop Coumarin. Depending on what you're putting in, 1 drop of Coumarin at 10% might be too strong. But I think there's enough strong things in here to kind of counteract the strength of Coumarin. It's going to give it that Tonka hay-like smell. And I think it goes in a lot of day-night fragrances, so kind of just, I guess, following the norm. CME. This is ambery. It's cheap. I like the smell of it. I think it smells great. It's like $3 for 15 milliliters. I think it's like the first time I got it. Pretty good. I like this with pretty much anything. Last and definitely not least, Ethyl Maltol, the crack cocaine of perfumery materials. This is the sugar. This is the sweet note in 80 to 90% of all sweet fragrances, and you don't need a lot of it. This is diluted to 5%, which is kind of high, but I think there's so many strong materials in it, I might need 5%. It's going to make it really sweet. If I had like a, normal strength materials in here, I probably put in like 1 drop of 1% or 2 drops of 1% dilution. But we'll go with 5 and see how it reacts. 1 drop, 5%. Even at 5%, it is kind of like solidifying, which is probably not good. So that's everything. This is how much we got, like just, maybe a half milliliter or less. So I'm kind of going to do the eye test here and kind of make it like maybe 2 milliliters. So I kind of want this to be like an Eau de Parfum concentration, but to do that, I would have to calculate like all the dilutions that I've put in because there's already a lot of alcohol in here. I'm just going to do the eye test, probably like 2 to 3 times that would probably make it around 20 to 25%, which is totally fine. And then once you're ready, once the formula is ready, you can weigh it out and do it properly and see how it smells. But I like to put in like maybe 3 times this to make it like what I think is probably about 20 to 25%. So we'll do that. In here we have Everclear. Okay. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. Yeah. Normally, you put in perfumer's alcohol or 200 proof alcohol, and it should be denatured. But for trials, I just use Everclear because it's such a high concentration of alcohol that the water content doesn't affect the aroma chemicals at all. If you add water to fragrance materials, usually it turns like white cloudy, or I don't know how others would react, but sometimes you get like a white cloudiness, which is, you know, not good. It's fine if you're just making a trial. It's not going to affect the smell at all. With Everclear, you don't really have to worry about that. In a finished fragrance, in a bottle, I would add 200 proof denatured alcohol. But for this, you know, it's cheap. This probably costs less than $1 to make, even with the bottle. So, there we go. Give it a shake. And we will put it on a strip. I like to be resourceful, so this is like some like junk mail that I cut up into strips. Oh god, good thing that has a lid on it. I'm going to be careful not to knock this over, so I like to bend the paper so I know which side to spray and smell. Okay. So the honey is pretty strong, so is the rose. It's not so sweet. What can I smell here? Don't really smell any of the apple. It's being swallowed up by the honey. There's something harsh about it, and I don't know what it would be. Maybe too much cardamom. Doesn't smell like cardamom though. The coumarin and the honey are kind of mixing together, making it kind of powdery. Definitely smell the coumarin. Maybe too much coumarin. It smells very feminine, and that is probably from the honey and the rose. Honey and rose, you know, they're kind of sweeter. Maybe too sweet, too sticky sweet for me. But I'm sure a lot of guys would probably smell this and they'd be like, oh yeah, that smells masculine to me. I've made fragrances before and I thought, wow, that is definitely masculine. And a lot of women liked it. A lot of men liked it. But for me, I don't like how sticky honey and rose sweet the fragrance is coming off the strip. Yep, so that's kind of how I make fragrances. First, I start out with a trial, and then I do as many retries as it takes. Usually around the first or second or third, I'm kind of gauging does this have potential? Should I put it on the back burner? Should I continue with it? This I do think has potential. I like how the base is coming out. The base smells, you know, sweet, woody. I like that. I don't know if the Palisandrol is really doing much. I haven't really. I mean, it doesn't feel too sandalwoody. The Okoumal, I think, is coming out more because I put a lot more of that in there. But this doesn't really smell like a day and night fragrance. It smells like a powdery unisex fragrance at the moment right now. Nothing too special about it, although the honey and the rose is kind of an interesting combination. I think there's just too much honey. Maybe even too much rose. I'll probably have to dilute to 0.1%. Maybe put in 1.1% drop of honey. And then maybe 2 or 3.1% drops of rose. I think that would be probably better. And then probably coumarin would have to come down. Not sure if anything else would have to change. But if you're going to retry a trial, don't change too much. For now, I'd only really change the rose, the honey, and then maybe the coumarin if I feel like it's worth it, but that's risky because, you know, you might not smell the coumarin if you reduce too much. Another thing I'll do if I like the fragrance off the strip is put it on my skin. And I usually like to put fragrances on my neck. So on the pressure points. I don't really like to put it on my arm. I used to do that when I was first starting out. I put my trials on my arm. I would put my new fragrances on my arm. But something I would do all the time, which I didn't think was good, was putting my arm to my nose and just constantly smelling it because I wasn't able to smell it otherwise. And if you put it on your neck all the time, you're going to smell your fragrances. There's a lot of heat coming off your neck. It's going to push it out into the air. You're going to smell it. So that's usually what I like to do. If you're not sure if you're going to like the fragrance or not, spray it on your hand. You can easily wash it off. I don't think this is great work or anything like that. Unfortunately, I can't give you an amazing fragrance. I think this is subpar. But with a few more trials, I think this would have potential. If you're making this fragrance at home, feel free to, put anything in that you want, take anything out that you want, or if you don't have it. If you don't like rose, just remove it. I think the mid is probably good enough. You have the Linalool that kind of brightens up the fragrance. Yeah, have fun with it. That's what making fragrances is all about. Thanks for watching.